Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 39th episode of Don't Forget the Popcorn. In American cinema, the late 90s and early 2000s was one of the most interesting and best times for American movies. The 90s was a time of prosperity in America. Consumerism was at a high point, and people were going to the movies. By the time we got to the year 2000, in my eyes, we saw a huge shift in the kinds of movies being made. 99 had such unique titles released and a variety too. We had movies like The Blair Witch Project grossing over 100 million off of a $60,000 budget. Films like American Beauty doing well at award ceremonies. Unique and mind-blowing movies like The Matrix instantly changing pop culture and the movies forever. And high school classics like American Pie and She's All That becoming cultural icons. The year 2000, or the start of the new millennium, saw a much lesser roster of films released. If you just look at the releases side by side, it's not even a comparison. 2000 was a year it seemed set out to make money by Hollywood. The titles that made the most money were obvious mega blockbuster action movies like Gladiator, Mission Impossible 2, and X-Men. But when you really start looking at the films that made the most money, they are all surface level films that really make the year 2000 a quite forgettable one. Don't get me wrong, we had some fun movies come out that year and some classics, but the year in retrospect feels flat and lifeless compared to the previous year. Now, some of the best movies of the year were under the radar films that have later become cult classics, like American Psycho, Memento, and the film we're going to be talking about today, Requiem for a Dream. These films exploit a dark nature of humanity and are all films about facing the truth about oneself. A mere reflection of one's own morals, ego, and perception of life and what we want out of it. Films like this offer us truths about ourselves that may be hard to take in and make some of these situations relatable. One of the most relatable films of this year was cult classic Requiem for a Dream. Requiem for a Dream, released in 2000, directed by legendary director Darren Aronofsky, starring legendary Ellen Burstyn, Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, and Marlon Wayans. This film, set in New York City, follows four people going through their own struggles with addiction while all being connected to each other. Now, I won't be going over this film point by point, but we'll be breaking down things as I go over the themes, so watch at your own risk if you haven't seen this before. This movie kicks right in as you see Harry, Jared Leto, arguing with his mother, Sarah, Ellen Burstyn, about him taking her TV set, the thing she loves the most, so he can sell it for drugs. Right away, you see the dynamic between these two. She's a single lady, and her son is all she has left and will do anything for him. This film doesn't really have a plot, more four separate character studies on how addiction can affect your life. So I think the best way to analyze this film is by its characters because they are what drives it. Harry, played by Jared Leto, is a heroin addict who is willing to do anything to satisfy his high, even if it means sacrificing his loved ones. He is a smart young man and does have rather good instincts, but as the film goes on, he lets himself wither away, becoming more and more pale and thin, and even letting himself get an insane infection that will have lifelong consequences later. Although he is an addict, he was quite a good drug dealer, and he does show love for the people around him. He rights his TV wrong with his mother later after gaining money from his deals. He is a loyal friend to Tyrone and is a caring boyfriend to his girlfriend Marion, who we will get into in a second. Harry's best quality in his character is also his worst. Harry is a hard lover to those he cares for, but his addiction has put those loved ones in harm's way. He has sacrificed the physical and mental needs of the people he loves to feed his addiction. The film shows you that when you are an addict of these levels, the absolute worst qualities in people can come out in otherwise rather good people. Marion, played by Jennifer Connelly, in my opinion, was the worst character in the story and had the least amount of redeemable qualities. Jennifer gives a great performance in this film, showing us the absolute worst that can come out of someone who has an addiction. She is dating Harry, but has other men and people she sees. Harry is completely in love with her, and she is in love with him too, but it's obvious Harry does care more for her than she does for him. Her love comes with the addiction tagged along, and when she doesn't have her drugs, stay away from her. She can be cruel and cold and will say anything to break a person down to feel like complete trash. What lengths she goes through to get her drugs is appalling and truly, really sad that substances can do this to someone's psyche. Her arc to me is one of the most tragic because it's really hard to see her getting out of the way she is in when we leave her anytime soon. We see this addiction quickly and truly change a rather okay person into a complete monster and someone they can't even recognize anymore. Tyrone, played by Marlon Wayans, gives us a nice dramatic performance and gives us the most color and humor in the film, even if it isn't much. He is Harry's best friend, and he is the one who sets them up as drug dealers and offers them the summer of their life. They have money, drugs, and freedom, and he is the example of someone who wants the American dream. Through his addiction, he does seem to handle it the best of all the players here. You can tell he hasn't had much in his life growing up and just wants to live it up the best he can while he can. A live fast, die young kind of mentality. He is quite careful and smart and does end up really making a nice living in the criminal underworld until some race and turf wars come into play. He is a good, loyal friend and really isn't out for any malicious intent. His ending is upsetting, but fortunately for him, I can see him possibly getting better and maybe kicking his addiction and getting a fresh start. Sarah, played by Ellen Burstyn, is the best arc and the best acting in the film. She was nominated for an Oscar, and you see why in her performance. Her story broke me in many ways. She is a sweet woman who is mourning the death of her husband and coping with her son being an addict and never being around to see her. She fills these voids with food, television, and coffee, and spends all of her time alone in her apartment in the city. Sarah watches infomercials and ends up getting a phone call saying she will be on TV. She gets very excited and goes on a mission to lose weight and fit back into the little red dress from her past. This woman goes on a heartbreaking journey with diet pills, and her addiction is a heartbreaker because you feel like you could be watching your own mom or grandmom going through this. This isn't an addiction by choice, but an addiction nonetheless, and this story is oddly the most resonant and meaningful arc in this movie. Her story has some of the scariest imagery, and you really start to feel for this lady. All this woman wants is a sense of nostalgia to a time where she felt loved and beautiful, and a time where life has meaning and was fulfilling to her. Getting older is hard, and it's even harder when you are alone. And when you find something to look forward to, a reason to wake up every day, it can become an addiction you never saw coming. The thing I love about this film is how in your face everything is, from the themes to the filmmaking techniques. It only comes in about an hour and 40 minutes, and this movie has no fat on it. The strong themes of addiction and what it does to the psyche is an important one, and a movie that I feel tackles the subject in a very strong and realistic way. I haven't read the novel, so I can't compare, but I think that Aronofsky has done with the themes here is very apparent, and I like it. Outside of Ellen Burstyn, we see exactly what we think addicts of these levels would do in these situations, and it's a good reminder of what drugs can do if it gets out of control. Drugs can take people who were nice, sweet, loving, and caring and can turn them into complete monsters. Through all of the darkness all of these characters possess, they still possess love. Even through these addictions, a lot of these characters still were longing for their loved ones' affection and attention, showing us that just because someone is an addict doesn't mean they aren't still a human being and that they don't possess a heart. We got to discuss the filmmaking techniques. What gives this movie flavor is that it has some crazy editing by Jay Robinwitz. The scenes where they do the drugs and those quick shots of the eyes is iconic. The film has this almost dark noir feel and look to it that kind of gives it a cold and dark feeling, really sinking you into the world these people are in. The score in this film is iconic, done by Clint Mansell. In the first half of the movie, it is slow and tempered. Then, as the intensity jumps, so does the score, and my lord, it really wraps you in as the film comes to its close. I can run it through my head over and over. It's so memorable. This movie is a great watch and is oddly rewatchable. I think it tackles a tough subject very well with honesty and sincerity, and it's done in a respectful way. It's very well acted and very well directed, and I truly don't have much criticisms of it. I think there were very smart choices made all throughout this film, and watching it again after about 10 years, I enjoyed it even more than I did back in the day. It's a cult film for a reason, and one cult film I think any lover of darker, bleaker films would enjoy. It's one I think everyone should see at least once. I will warn anyone who is recovering from an addiction or maybe had a problem that this movie can possibly be a tough watch for you. So if you think this is subject matter would be hard for you to handle, I would stay away from this film for a while. This is a classic and I only see it gaining more and more notoriety over the years. Overall, I will give Requiem for a Dream an 8.6 out of 10. Guys, thank you so much for watching another in-depth cult review. Let me know if there's a film you'd like me to review. If you made it this far, go ahead and slap the like button and subscribe to the channel. Great content coming for you guys, and I appreciate it dearly. I will be back next week, and don't forget the popcorn.